Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory, and you are watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, a cozy little corner of the internet for people who love stories and love narrative. Does my camera feel weird? Is it up in my head? Maybe it is. Anyhow, the point of this show is that we play a solo tabletop RPG. This one's pretty simple, so I imagine it'll be a shorter stream. We play a solo tabletop RPG, and we try to write some little narrative or story or even just a scene around it. I think this one's probably going to be better served as a scene. I don't think there's a whole story to be woven out of it. But we're going to talk about the game in a minute. I do want to say hello to my chat. Hello, GS, Witchery, Uncle Kitty, Tammy. I almost called you Uncle Tammy. Tammy, whose shoulder, unfortunately, after surgery is still hurting and will be lurking more. I'm sorry to hear that it's still hurting. And Jumpstore. Good to see you, Jumpstore. And anybody out there who is lurking. And, of course, Witchery. Witchery, my sister got me Animal Crossing Pocket Edition. It is now just a small one-time purchase and no microtransaction nonsense. I do like Animal Crossing. But, yeah, I mostly played the one on the Switch. Which I guess is sort of not as big now, but especially during COVID, it was a fun game. All right. Let's get to a description of the game. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you want to watch the show, because it is the show. It's called Lit Games. And Lit Game stands for literature games, and it's my catch-all term for the many, many, many subgenres of little indie solo tabletop RPGs there are. And tonight's game that we're going to be playing is called How the Goose Stole Christmas. And as far as I can tell, it is effectively the game Untitled Goose Game, if you've ever heard of that. If you haven't, you guys can certainly find video of it on YouTube. It's a simple game where you play a goose who just ruins everyone's day by stealing things and moving them around and knocking them into ponds and stuff like that. It's an extremely popular game from several years ago, but this seems to be taking the same idea, geese being sort of agents of chaos that they are. This one is about a goose in the North Pole. It is meant to be played with a group. It is not a solo game per se, but we, and by we, I mean chat. So if you're here live, make sure you join the chat so you can join in. By the way, if you're not here live, I forgot to mention this, you can jump ahead to whatever part of the show is most interesting to you by going to the timestamps in the description below. But anyways, the idea is that you would take a group of people and play as geese as like a Christmas party thing, game. But we're going to sort of play one goose and who's wrecking up the North Pole, and we'll see what comes of it. To be honest, this one's a bit of a wild card decision for me. I don't know how well it's going to work, and I'm not putting any expectations on it. To play the game, you need dice. You need specifically 3d6. So it is a d6 system in that way. So I'll read you the rules. They're pretty short, and I'll sort of explain a little bit of them, and then we will... Uncle Kitty says, nowadays the Goose Game spot is taken by Squirrel with Gun. I think that's true, though I think there was probably... I've seen both. I've played Goose Game. I haven't played the Squirrel with a Gun, but I feel like there's more charm in the Goose Game. More artistic focus, where Squirrel with a Gun just feels very memey. Okay, become a goose. You roll 1d6, which again is for anybody who's not a nerd, but why would you be watching this if you weren't? Some tiny stream about tabletop RPGs, but you don't know what a d6 is, I think is unlikely, but in case. That's a d6. It's a regular dice. You roll a d6 to determine the type of goose your horrible bird will be. Each goose has something it's good at and something it is bad at, and they will affect gameplay later. We're going to roll for that in a minute. I'm just going to explain the rules. But for example, there's goose types are like Canadian goose, Obviously, I'm Canadian, so I'm partial to that. Barnacle, Goose, Gosling, whatever else. And then you're good at, could be making jokes, biting things, swimming, so on, and bad at handling heat, being quiet, being small, being alone, so on and so forth. Next, your mission is to cause chaos. Whenever you attempt something that has an uncertain outcome, the GM, which again, we don't have a GM, so we're just going to kind of be our own GM, will ask you to roll for it. First, the GM will assign a difficulty question to the task in question. Each difficulty level has an associated threshold. So, easy is 9. Chat, you should remember this because you're going to help me come up with the difficulties for the things we face. And easy is a 9. In other words, the average roll of a dice, right? Because D6's average is 3. Easy is 9. Medium is 12, which would be everything rolling 1 above average. And hard is 15. So then you roll your 3d6, which is your beginning dice. If your goose is good at the task in question, you will add 1d6 to the pool. If your goose is bad at the task, you will subtract 1d6 from the pool. And there's a mechanic about naughtiness. I'll talk about that in a minute. Once you have finished adding and subtracting dice, roll all the dice in your pool. And to accomplish a task, the number rolled must be greater than or equal to the threshold of the task's assigned difficulty level. And what they're saying there is you add together all the dice you rolled, and if their total is greater than the threshold of your difficulty, then you pass, which is a complicated way of saying roll higher than the difficulty, which is how all these games work. Rolling 2 or more 1s is considered a bane, so like crit failing. While rolling 2 or more 6s is considered a boon. And yes, it is possible to accomplish a task while still receiving a bane and vice versa. These can be Pyrrhic victories, failing forward, unintended terrible consequences, yada yada. That's for us to interpret because, of course, there will be no GM, so when we get that, we'll come up with something. Okay, naughtiness. As you are horrible geese, you have an innate quality of incivility known as naughtiness, which is a great sentence, by the way. Each goose starts off with 1d6 plus 3 naughtiness points, which means we'll roll the d6 plus 3. That'll be our baseline naughtiness as a goose. You can spend 1 naughtiness point to add 1 extra die to a roll. So it's sort of like inspiration in some other games, but we have a certain amount of pool. So if we're trying to do something we're bad at, our base dice roll will be a 2d6. But if we think we couldn't possibly make that, like if it's like a 13 is the threshold, then what we do is we can spend our naughtiness points and add another dice to that roll and increase our odds that we're going to beat it. There is no limit to how many naughtiness points you can spend on a single task, so we could spend all 4 and roll like a massive handful of dice if we wanted. I say 4. It could be like 6. Who knows? On a boon, you gain a naughtiness point, and on a bane, which again is when we roll 2 1s, you lose a naughtiness point. If your total naughtiness is reduced to 0, you see the error of your ways and become a nice goose, which I consider the bad ending. Doing everything in your power to save Christmas. When one of the fellow geese turns nice, you can spend a naughtiness point to attempt to dissuade them. This is for group play, to attempt to dissuade them. Anyways, I won't go into that because we're not going to actually do that. For the GM, which they hilariously call the Goose Master, for those who don't know, that GM usually refers to Game Master. If you need to help setting the stage for these birds of chaos to ruin Christmas, roll and use the following tables, and they give us some tables, which we will be using because we need to come up with ideas of what we're dealing with. And that's the full rule set. It's a single page. Goat Simulator, yeah. There's a wild one. Jumpstore says, what was your opinion of the Canadian government calling dozens of Canadian geese like a few years back? I don't remember. It's happened more than once. I guess it depends on the reasoning for it. We do have a hell of a lot of geese. All right. Obviously, I'm not charmed by the idea of hurting animals. But... Tried to take the shirt off and it pulled my hair for some reason. What if our goose tried to create chaos but was so bad at it they ended up helping people and thought that was intentional? ProZD, if people know that, has a video about that, about a villain who just keeps accidentally doing good. Okay. Gotta get a couple of things in place. And then we will put together a goose. If you have any goose opinions, now's the time to share them about what our goose should be. It's not a good one, but Merry Honkmas. How the Goose Stole Christmas. Playthrough. All right. I guess we should roll and see our what if the goose accidentally summons birds, Satan? Let's roll our first d6 to see what type of goose we are. Although, I'll be honest, I might just default to Canadian goose. It's the one I know best. Barnacle goose. I might know what that is. Let me look it up. Yeah, I've seen these before, but where are they from? Let's see what Wikipedia has to say. Iceland. Oh. Seem to be on a few Atlantic coasts around Iceland there. I mean, we can be a barnacle goose. Cute little thing. I don't think it really affects that much. Dice number 2. 2. Good at making jokes. Our goose is good at making jokes. Comedian extraordinaire. And let's see what he's bad at. I rolled 2 2s and a 1. He's bad at being quiet. Well, that's great. All right. And then we need to set our scene for the Goose Master. Our location. Jumpstart says, I can't wait to see Rory make some ghost jokes. I mean, we'll see. They're going to be the goose making jokes. Oh my god, I rolled another 1. So a toy factory. That's probably what we were imagining anyways. It was a bright, frozen morning outside the toy factory. Adversaries. We don't have to roll this right away, but we may as well. It's another 1. The Guard Elves. Okay. Why am I only rolling 1s with this? What should this goose's name be? I mean, it's a barnacle goose. Do we want to call it Barney? I'm open to other names, chat, if you want to start giving me other names. But I'm just going to put Barney in as a placeholder. Barney could tell even the little elf guards at the door were cold by the frozen blue tips of their nose. Goosifer. Awesome. We're doing that. Okay, and then unlikely allies. I mean, we can roll this later too. See if I change my mind, but I'm curious if any ideas are in here. Jumpstore likes Uncle Kitty's suggestion. Yeah, me too. I rolled another one. I rolled 3 ones in a row. The Elf Labor Union. Awesome. Okay. It was a bright frozen morning outside the toy factory. Goosifer could tell even... it doesn't need to be connected. Goosifer could tell. Goosifer, a plump... barnacle goose with an elegant beak. Nope. Plump with down, could tell the little elf guards at the door were shivering cold. Goosifer, on the other hand, was well warmed by his ample plumage. Uncle Kitty says Goosifer was the name of an angry goose on post when I was a guard. Oh. A friend or a foe? Or is it like the Fae? On the other hand, was well warmed. That should be hyphenated. By his ample plumage, and barely felt the sharp northern winds. Of the barren North Pole. All right. Inside, the voices of a chorus of goblins were cackling out in poor approximations. Inside the voices of a chorus of goblins were cackling out in poor approximations. We're cackling poor approximations of carols. The goblins, on top of being little flesh-eating monsters, were made all the worse by being Santa's scabs. No, not like you might see on healing skin, but the type to undermine the solidarity of the striking elves union. How, you might wonder, did Goosifer come? Did you really need to make that specification? I'm writing it like a children's book, so yeah. It's obviously not a children's book, but yes. That over-explained tone in simple sentences. How, you might wonder, did Goosifer come to be wound up in Santa's labor dispute? Was he a goose of high moral fiber, seeking to do well by the drone-trodden amongst him? Nay. Goosifer was a goose, and like all geese, lacked all empathy and any sort of moral compass. Instead, the goose was offered bread and tasty nonsense. Tasty seeds, I guess? I mean, I know we feed them bread and we're not supposed to and all that, but instead the goose was offered bread and tasty seeds by the union to raise hell in the scab-ridden factory. Witchery says, I unlocked the villager goose. Oh, wow. Goose goes nuts for waters and peas. Bread and 4 bags of frozen peas by the Elf Union. Yeah. For those who don't understand, Witchery is playing Animal Crossing. And Animal Crossing has a mechanic where because the point of Animal Crossing is you're on a little island community. Well, at least the most recent ones are island. I don't know if this one's like the old ones where you were just in a village, but you sort of go around and help people in the town and whatever. It's just a chill game. But the way that you get new villagers is they come and they visit. It might work a bit different in that game. They come and visit, and then you can sort of invite them to the island. You usually have to persuade them or something. Every game has a bit of a different conception on it. So what Witchery is saying there is just at random, while playing her game, she happened to unlock a Goose theme Animal Crossing character, because all the Animal Crossing characters are animals of some sort. Nay, Goosifer was a goose, and like all geese lacked all empathy and any sort of moral compass. Instead, the goose was offered bread and 4 bags of frozen peas by the Elf Union if the goose were to successfully... Witcher says, this is in a campsite. I'll be recruiting animals to my commune. Oh, so it's similar to how New Horizons works, or is it how New Horizons works? You mentioned you had 1,000 hours. I don't have 1,000 hours, but I do have an insane amount of hours in that game compared to how much I normally play a game. Like, I think it is easily the game I've played the most. But that's a bit deceptive, because it is the kind of game where, like, everything takes a while to do. That's kind of half the point. It's sort of a chore cycle game. So, like if you say that you have 500 hours of Elden Ring, that's a very different story than 500 hours of Animal Crossing, right? But yeah, and I think that's about where I was at with it. Maybe a bit less than 500 hours, but almost all of that was done making my village into Christmas stuff, because we had our Christmas party through Discord and Animal Crossing in 2020. Witchery says, Goose is a rooster. Oh, Goose is the name. I thought you unlocked one of the Goose characters. And 4 bags of frozen peas by the Elf Union if the Goose were to successfully raise hell in the scab-ridden toy factory. Okay, there's our premise. The Elf Union went on strike. There's a bunch of elf guards now around the toy factory, and Santa has staffed it with goblins. So our Goose is going to be paid some frozen peas and bread to go in there and raise hell. First thing it's got to do is get past those guards. So Witchery says, Rory, you will not believe how many decoration items there are in this mobile phone version. That's nuts that the mobile phone version is there. Jumpstore says, I really want to eat a bar of chocolate, but I wanted to use it in my baking, and the price of chocolate's going up. So I don't know if I should, but I also don't know if I can resist the temptation. Ooh, that's a tough call. What were you going to put in the baking? Like, how much is it going to feature in that baking? Okay. Here we go. Chat. We have a Goose who's good at making jokes, bad at being quiet, and they need to get past guards. So let's decide the first thing before we do anything else. The difficulty, the low end difficulty is 9, the medium end difficulty is 12, and the high end difficulty is 15. And this is probably a good thing for our recurring segment of let's tie a poll together. And by tie a poll together, I'm not being euphemistic. I mean, let's just end it in a tie and I'll learn nothing. Because that's how it always goes. But let's see, how difficult should the elf guards be? Everything the Goose says is in caps. That's a good idea. Easy, medium. I wish you could like preset these poll options. It would make my life a lot easier. There probably is a way. I haven't really looked into it. So I'll give you, I don't know, not too long, like 2 or 3 minutes. How difficult should the elf guards be to get past? Before we decide how to get past them, let's decide how difficult they're going to be. Easy, medium, or hard. Jumpstore says, well, how much does chocolate feature in a silk chocolate pie? It sounds like it features a lot. You should probably save that chocolate. But yeah, take the chef tax. That's right. I think you'll probably get more out of the experience, the chocolate aspect of it, just saving it for the pie. Because the thing about a bar of chocolate, it's not bad, but it's not the most like mouth-filling chocolate flavor. One thing, I'm not, maybe I shouldn't say this because I don't want to ruin anyone's time, but one that I used to eat more chocolate, and then I saw a news story, a credible news story, not like a hysterical one, from a credible website that was just about how chocolate is uniquely bad at like picking up heavy metals and things like that, like lead. And it went through all these, even like fine organic Swiss chocolate had this problem. And they said like the reason why it picked up lead so much was complex situations to do with how a cocoa bean gets here. And that cocoa beans are just really bad at picking it up. So I've tried to eat a bit less chocolate lately. I mean, it is true that lead poisoning, which I know a lot about from a past career, lead poisoning is one of those things that matters a lot more the younger you are, but it's not pointless. Yeah, cadmium is the other one too. Lindt had a lot of cadmium, but again, it wasn't just cheap chocolate. Like certainly the cheap chocolates weren't doing much, but even stuff that was like organic, free trade, out of Europe stuff was still contaminated with lead and cadmium. And they said it's just a problem with like where they're stored and so on. Like it's a more endemic problem than just getting cheap chocolate. But that's not me trying to discourage people from eating chocolate. Like everything's got a risk. If you're in America, there's like a non-zero chance that your pipes have lead in them, unfortunately. Uncle Kitty says, I can tell you a story that will put you off chocolate for life. You probably could. I don't think that'd be too hard. Okay, I'm going to give you guys about another minute, drink some water on the poll. Once we decide that, let's start to thinking about what we want to do to get past our guards and go raise hell. Yeah. I'm more in your favor on that, Jumpstore. I don't think it's irrelevant. Like, I do think, you know, you need to put some thought into the things you eat and do. But I do think that to some extent, any form of life is going to collect a certain amount of disease and injury in yourself. And we all pay the piper some way. Uncle Kitty said my mom used to drive a truck delivering cocoa beans to Hershey. Wow. What a specific job. Witchery says, I'll give chocolate exactly when the climate crisis makes me. Well, that's a good point. I've wondered about that with coffee. I won't go into all the nerdiness of it, but there's a reason why climate change is uniquely challenging to coffee. Anyways, I'm not here to depress people. We're here to talk about a goose mercenary doing good work for the working class. Jumpstore says, a common saying among pirates back in the day was a short life, but a merry one. I discovered the other day that one of the more famous pirates was in... I don't want to get this wrong, so anyone can tell me who it was or that I was wrong or whatever. He was a gay man who just openly so. And he largely went after slave ships and then like offered the slaves to be able to just be on his ship with him. But he didn't engage in it or something like that. Anyways, I'm sure pirate, is still a bad thing as much as we romanticize it, but it was an interesting character, especially compared to the ones I usually hear about, like Blackbeard, who are just, you know, it's fun to read stories about, but it sounds like a horrible person. Okay, let's close that poll. Oh wow, people went with hard. I didn't expect hard. Okay. Oh, I forgot to roll our naughtiness points. Let me do that now. Don't roll a 1. I rolled a 5. Yay. It was 5 plus. It was a d6 plus what? Plus 3. Okay. So 8 naughtiness points. Let me make a note of that. 8 naughty. Witchery says, "Oh, there was a poll. They don't show for me if I'm in the text box." I don't understand how YouTube can be like $1 billion company that specifically is trying to steal business from Twitch. But it's online streaming features. This is the thing they want you to do. This and shorts. It has such weird little limitations. Okay. Difficult means was 15, was that it? 15, yeah. Difficulty 15. Yeah, that's fair enough, Witchery. Okay. So now we need to determine what we're doing. We're bad at stealth because we're loud all the time. So stealth we can do, but it's almost impossible to pass that unless we use naughtiness points. We're apparently good at jokes. I don't know how that's going to get us past elves. But I'm opening the floor to ideas. How is our... what should we try? And then I'll roll it, see what we come up with. Yeah. We're a goose on a mission. We want to get in to the toy factory. Witchery says YouTube streaming is better in some ways. It definitely is. I have looked at streaming on Twitch. There are some weird anachronistic kind of... Is that the right word here? Maybe not. Just hangovers from an earlier generation that they've sort of legacy stuff they've hung on to that isn't very useful. I don't really understand. I guess it's a budget thing why they don't want to allow higher quality streaming. Although apparently they've unlocked it for some people. Uncle Kitty says it was a pretty good job for her. She picked up the beans, dropped them up. Where'd she pick them up? Just the shipping yard? Or did she actually have to go cross border? Jumpstore says it's $1 billion company because it has no real competition. Maybe when it comes to streaming, it has to compete with Twitch or Kick. But as far as posting videos it goes, it has the monopoly. That's true. Although they are getting broken up a bit in the States. I've been told they have to sell Chrome. Which, honestly, I'm sure will change how that service works, and there's some problems that can come with that, but it's overdue. Google has not been running things very well recently. It's from a person who largely prefers Google over most of my Overlord options. Train depot. I forget that a lot of people don't live near a coast. That's right. Trains are a thing. Witchery says, hashtag Firefox. Well, apparently Mozilla, boy, this is not what people tune in for. Apparently Mozilla, something about this anti-trust charge affects Mozilla. I didn't really understand why, though. There was something about how Google works with their default search engine thing that Mozilla benefits from, or something to that effect, quite a bit. And the antitrust lawsuit by the state said that they can't do that anymore, and apparently that would make Mozilla a lot. Apparently Mozilla is like bleeding customers, which is wild to me, because if you're not using... Mozilla owns Firefox. If you're not using Firefox, why? I mean, I use Firefox and Chrome, but like I definitely prefer Firefox. All right. Nobody seems to have any ideas how to deal with the guards. So, I think I have a bit of an idea. Goosifer, that's his name. Jumpstore says, oh, sorry, Rory, I forgot you asked. That's fine, Jumpstore. You're the audience. I'm here to entertain. Goosifer saw above the guards there was an open window. A deft and careful step. After a flutter from a nearby pine would have let Goosifer quietly land on the sneak around the shivering guards with steps near silent. Made near silent? Made near silent by the soft layer of fresh snow. However, Goosifer squawked, or honked, I guess, honked every third or fourth step and could hardly bear Uncle Kitty says, speaking of software, am I alone in despising Teams? I was lucky enough I didn't have to use Teams very long. For some reason, a company I used to work for, they just for a period of a year, like every 6 months, signed up for just a completely different version of Teams. There was a Google G Suite version. There was a Teams. There was Slack. Was that it? I think that was before Microsoft had Slack. This was a while ago. Maybe they always did, and I'm misremembering this. I know there was another one, too. I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, I didn't like any of them. As far as I was concerned, we were paying enterprise rates for something we could do for free on Discord. But they were like, well, I don't know, there's data security. But we weren't sending any secure data through it. So, I don't know what it was about. It was management. Goosifer honked every third or fourth step and could hardly bear. That is a problem, though. In Canada, we have some rules about how professional data, corporate data, gets handled. And usually it requires us to not store it in other countries. And almost all those services host their servers in America, obviously. So we don't use it as much, or at least we have to come up with other solutions. However, Goosifer honked every third or fourth step and could hardly bear being unnoticed. for more than 30 seconds. So the window. So instead, Goosifer ran screaming at the shivering elven guards. His wings wide and his demeanor demonic. See if he succeeds in scaring them. I'm going to use a naughty point. That's not going to get any less weird to say. So I'll roll 4d6 then. It's a pretty lousy roll. Nine, 10. It's a 5, a 4, a 1. So that's 10, and 2 is 12. That's not enough. Okay. Geese, though he was ferocious... well, wait a minute. The guards were steadfast. Though fear grew in their widening eyes. Tree says a third-party solution is never as secure as they claim. Indeed. Yes, just stating facts. Well, if it were easy, it wouldn't be difficult. Grew in their widening eyes. The guards were steadfast, though fear grew in their widening eyes. As is there like a pun you can think of for candy cane halberds or polearms? Because I feel like that's what they would have. Though the guards were steadfast, though fear grew in their widening eyes, as the incomprehensible beast roared into range. Alas, Goosifer underestimated Pepper Spear. Which he says, I'm going to scream. This bitty phone game has terrain editing that is beautiful. Oh, lovely. Goosifer underestimated. Alas, Goosifer underestimated the resolve of Santa's elite elven core. With a merry grunt, they drew up their candy cane weapons. Pepper Spear. Guess it could also be Spearman. Oh, Jumpstore said I would have said Spearmint, but that wouldn't have been an obvious pun. That was the same thought I had. I was like, Spearmint would have worked. But then I think people would just have not understood it. It would have slipped by too fast. Witcher says, it is lovely, but I need to take Nintendo by the collar and shake them. Honestly, if I'm going to start with Nintendo property shaking, it's going to be the Pokemon Company. Because what the hell? You're the biggest brand in the damn world, and what you choose to do with it is make a game from 1999 with barely any changes. Then sue people who developed the idea. What color should the light behind me be today? I realized I forgot to color it. Do like a violet. We could do like a green. A red. I'm gonna guess most people like violet. Just says that's uncolored. Looks nice. It's technically a mode called Candlelight, so it's a little on the sort of brown side of white. They drew up their candy cane weapons, pepper spears, as they were known. And swung for the outstretched neck of Goosifer. He shrunk back quick into his own body just in time. All right. Trying to intimidate them didn't work. What's the next thing we should try? They know we're there now. So stealth is out. Not that it was ever really in. Just says I got the McDonald's Grinch meal today in order to get the mismatched Grinch socks, but it's not available in the States. Poor Americans. That's very weird. Quick, tell them a joke. Oh, good point. That is the premise, isn't it? Tell them a joke. I mean, it's got to be corny, right? I mean, it's got to be something along the lines of like, why did the pony have a sore throat? Because he's a little horse. Like, it's got to be something like that. It's also got to come through the layer of what would an elf think is funny. Perhaps Goosifer is an insult comic. I mean, that's definitely more in my wheelhouse. Yeah, it's tough to come up with a joke on the spot. Jump store. What kind of tree has fur? A conifer tree? GS says, why did the goose cross the road? Because he liked the honking? You guys are nailing it. Okay. I at least need to set the scene a bit. Keep those jokes coming. Goosifer. A soul with no shame and no regrets. Quickly shifted gears. Picked up a stick. And hung it in his wings' feathers. As if it were a microphone. He then said, "Whoa! Honk, honk. Tough crowd. I just came here by charge of Santa." I love these jokes. To entertain our troops here in the noble North Pole. The elves looked to each other, each raising an eyebrow, then said, "Who has ever heard of a goose comedian?" You! Today, the goose said with goosey confidence. Keep up. Short stack. Or like a tabletop. These'll go over your head. The elves. The elf furrowed his brow at this dig. He was obviously irritated. Uncle Kitty says, "Have a gander at these," draws pistols. Jumpstore says, good God, I hope someone is laughing at my terrible puns. I'm sure I will be. I haven't looked at them all yet. I'm literally getting these off the top of my head, really digging into my Jewish entertainer roots. That's true. That's true. A good history of some of the best comedians to ever live. He was obviously irritated by the slight on his height. But drew back his spear and let the goose continue. I notice we have a lot of trees out here tonight at the North Pole. Goosifer vamped. How are all the trees doing tonight? The two elves in the forest line and the tree line to the snowy forest stood stone still and listened to the soft whistle of the passing breeze. Good, good. Uncle Kitty says, if you play 5e, Rory, I do indeed. Amongst other things. The DM's Guild has a Goose themed book called the Honkonomicon. That's fantastic. That's 5e's real strength. Homebrew. Good, good, Goosifer. Said, stamping his webbed foot in the ground. Then saying, hey, I used to know a tree, but it wasn't like any tree here tonight. It had fur. Can you believe that? Writing a goose as a hack comedian is surprisingly entertaining. I don't know anybody else is enjoying this, but I am. Can you believe that? Apparently came from a line of conifer trees. Let's see if they find it funny. No, that was a 9. Oh, we get one extra one. That's right. Because we're funny, apparently. It's a 4, so that's still not enough to beat them. There was a cacophony of honking and snorting at his own joke. But when he peeked back, at the two guards, they stood as still as two British soldiers. I'm gonna have to get my A-grade material out if I am to get in that factory. The goose thought to himself. What was the next one? Oh, GS had the honking. Honk, honk. No, but seriously, folks. It's a bit of a tough day for me today. My Uncle Goosey is in the hospital. Goosifer said, Jess says, I can't believe these are being put into writing for eternity. Oh yeah, like everything I write is solid gold. Come on. There's lots of nonsense on this channel. Goosifer, my Uncle Goosey is in the hospital, Goosifer said, feigning a solemn look towards the ground. Turns out he just loves crossing a street. You know why? Because he loves honking. Honk. Oh, I meant to put the G on, but I think it's better without. Honk. Goosifer really shrieked the honks to help sell his excellent joke. See if it works. It's better. That is a 13. Two threes, a 6, and a 1. one of the elves, the one below the open window, just ever so slightly twitched his mouth to reveal a bit of levity in his stalwart stance. What else do we have? Oh, I see. Hey, so it's the big man's day. Day soon. I guess I should make it clear I'm talking about Santa. The big red man's day soon. Goosifer continued, reassured in his plan that a good joke could paralyze the guards with laughter. But you know, what his favorite tree is. It's named after an old friend, Chris Mastery. I'm gonna spend a naughty point. Where is it? Actually, I'll spend 2 naughty points. I'm not gonna use all of these anyways. Which means I can roll 6d6. If I can't get a 15 on that, then the goose is just going to attack them. This is not a good roll. Oh my god. It's enough to pass, but only just. 2 3s, a 2, so that's 8. And then another 2, that's a 10, and then a 4 and a 1, that's 15. The elf guards could hold it in no longer. They leaned on their knees and with a long groan said, "Oh, it hurts. These jokes are so bad. These jokes are terrible. You'd be a better roast than a roaster." But that was all the opening. Goosifer needed. He honked and leapt on the back of the folded over elves. Then swiftly got through the window to the wide floor of Santa's Northern Toy Factory. The guards would soon be in pursuit. So time was of the essence to create all the chaos he could. His arrival through the window in a cloud of down startled the goblins in ill fit conical elf hats. Some dropped the toys they were hammering together, and because they were unskilled as goblins are, the toys shattered easily on impact. Goosifer's in a foul mood now. Having those he gave those guards goosebumps. Uncle Kitty says, "Ah, them's fighting words indeed." Okay. We've gotten our goose into a toy factory. It's full of scabs. A bunch of hired goblins who are making terrible toys. What is our goose going to do? I'm opening this up to chat. Although I will say we don't have a ton of time left, so it might just be this. What is the most damage you can do before he gets caught or has to run? Geese asks the age-old question that has haunted philosophy for years. Do geese goose? Do geese goose? If I was a popular streamer, I'd probably make that a shirt. Ooh, pops all the Jack-in-the-Boxes? That's good. Ooh, dumps out the Legos is an excellent idea. Yeah, let's do the Lego thing first. Okay. We'll say that we've decided that there is such a thing as the noun to goose. I guess goose will be our general action where we're sort of pecking and creating chaos. Let's do the chat. Let's say, how difficult should it be to cause the Lego to malfunction the Lego machine? It's not the best sentence, but you'll know what I mean. Easy, normal, hard. I'll get him there while you guys work on that. Goosifer was overwhelmed with choice. Did he nip a hole in all the pant seats of the goblin scabs? Did he tip the Barbies into the Play-Doh processor? Did he toss the Easy Bake ovens in the candy cistern and start a fire? Well, time allowing, he would get to all of that. However, one priority shone above the rest. Unleash the hell of a Lego tsunami. Considered in most provinces a cruel and illegal practice. Weaponized Lego was the most foul and wicked thing a soldier Goose could use. Taking advantage, the goblins short, green, and spotted with patchy hair, screened and well running from the spread wings and hellish cries of Goosifer the Fierce. As he sometimes honked into his mirror. They laid bare a wide path to the tall, whirring machine that fed colored liquid. From several basins, then spit out a regular stream of mismatched and sharp-edged plastic blocks. See how that poll is gonna do. GS says pecking the stuffing out of millions of squishmallows. And Jumpster goes, no, not the squishmallow. If you don't know what squishmallows are, by the way, they're a big sort of round stuffed animal that is really just purpose built to be squished. He has to poop on something. He's a goose. That's a good point. Okay, I'm ending the poll. I ended the poll. Come on. Give me my results. What the hell? Well, I know that Easy was in the lead. I don't know why the results aren't coming through. Another success for YouTube. So Easy is 9, I think? Yeah, Easy was 9. Oh, our 3d6 gave us an 8. So whatever we try, I should have asked what we were doing first, but oh, it finally came through. Okay, it just lagged out on me. That was like a full minute on my end until those results came through. Okay. Then spit out a regular stream of mismatched and sharp-edged plastic blocks. Okay. Goosifer ran up to the panel and turned it to max. In order to begin the flood of Lego. Unfortunately for Goosifer, who was no less inclined to technology than any other goose, he failed to notice this referred to the brick size. Uncle Kitty says, sorry I missed it. The kitty demanded food. Which kitty? Uncle Kitty or the kitty kitty? the machine began to rumble and smoke. The metal anchors that held it to the concrete floor chipped, shook until they had chipped away small pits around every bolt. GS says, could be Uncle Kitty demanded food too. What's like your, I know I ask this every year and I forget it every year, so it's an evergreen question. What's your, like, it's this season, whatever that is to you, it's this season's come, now I'm going to have this food. Like for a lot of people, it's eggnog. For me, it was mincemeat tarts, but actually I've had a very hard time finding gluten-free options in that regard, which is sad because I love mincemeat tarts. But I'm curious what it is for you folks. It doesn't have to be something you specifically had on Christmas, just something that tends to come around this time of year that you're into. The metal anchors that held it to this concrete floor shook until they had chipped, not chippered. Oh, GS is mincemeat tarts as well. Uncle Kitty said it used to be pie. Oh, did something change? Pavlova, Witchery says. I don't know what that is. Let me Google. I mean, you're in Australia, so I imagine things are... Oh, it's a meringue. Yeah, I guess you're like in spring, right? It's apparently an Australia or New Zealand thing. It looks very good. Is it just a meringue or does it have more to it than that? Looks like it's just a meringue. That's fine. I'm just curious. Jumpstore says, I love the suffix at the beginning of my name. One of my cats was named Aikawa-san because she was named after an anime character, and all the characters always use the san. Yeah, not unusual for Japan in general. And then Jumpstore says, eggnog. That's always my answer because pretty much the only thing I can't have all year round unless I make it myself. I specifically don't make turkey outside of Christmas. Keep in mind, Canadian Thanksgiving is in October, and we barely celebrate it. Richard says it's soft inside, not hard all the way through. You put cream on top with fruit and/or chocolate. Cream like buttercream kind of thing, or like a pastry cream, or do you mean like whipping cream? Because I love whipping cream. Fruit is I love fruit and things. GS says brandy beans. Ooh, yeah, my dad used to like brandy beans. They're just chocolate filled with brandy. Witchery says summer by Christmas. How does that change things for you? Like does Australia just basically not care about Christmas that much, or does it still hold purchase in the culture? It's just more like a barbecue or something. GS says, Rory, get out your grinder in September and grind your raisins, suet, rum, or whatever booze you like. I've considered it. But part of the thing is I don't think it's going to taste right. It's going to taste better. Hopefully this makes sense. It'll probably taste better, but not right. Because I always had cheap, crappy ones. But at some point I should. Yeah, I should just make it myself. I don't have the ability to do canning sterile, though. I don't know how much it matters with that. Jumpstore says, I love pastry cream. Yeah, me too. We still do Christmas. Some do the whole roast. Some do barbecue. Some do cold cuts, salads, and things. I think that'd be cool. I was honestly thinking of, but I don't think I could do it out in like the pouring rain. It would throw off all the temperature and whatever else. But I was honestly thinking of pulling my barbecue out and making a big chunk of brisket, like smoking brisket for like 14 hours and doing that for Christmas. But I just don't think in our weather I could keep that temperature as stable as it needs to be, and then you would waste $100 cut of meat. The metal anchors that held it to the concrete floor shook until they chipped away small pits around every bolt. Finally, when all the cisterns of colored liquid had drained, bursting from the broken belting of the grand machine came a rainbow brick. So large it tore through the roof beams as it tumbled off the end Jumpstart says, I wish Zombie was here. I feel lonely as the only vegetarian now. I will say that I eat about half my food is full vegetarian. Frankly, vegan. But yeah. I've never really found a dish that I would love for Christmas in the vegetarian. I mean, as like a side dish, sure, but I'm trying to think what I would do as a feature. Because I've tried the tofurkey and stuff, and it's fine, but it's not. It doesn't feel special. I don't know what, if anything, do you do for obviously not Christmas, but seasonal feasts, if you will. Well, no, you said I think it was your father's side of the family was Christmassy. Sorry if I'm misremembering that. My potatoes are famous, full on famous, and they're famous because they're full on stolen from Marco Pure White. But they are made with a food mill, run through a food mill twice, and then you put a bit of whipping cream and a lot of butter, a bit of salt. People eat it. I tell them it's savory icing because that's what it is. That's what mashed potatoes are. GS says no roast goose. I mean, it is hard to find, oddly enough, good geese here for how many geese we have. I made roast goose once and the fat kept filling up to the top of my ample roasting pan. I guess that makes sense, yeah. I had to keep bailing it out while roasted. I thought it would catch fire. Well, it probably would. I know when I've done like duck breast, you do have to kind of render the fat out or else it's just eating half a mouthful of gummy fat. All right. From the broken belting of the grand machine came a rainbow brick so large it tore through the roof beams as it tumbled off the end of the conveyor belt. It was bowing. The goblins scattered as the massive Lego caved in the factory roof and crushed and shattered the very foundations once it settled. Jumpstore says, yep, my father's side isn't Jewish. That's amazing. I remembered that. I have such a terrible memory. So I grew up with the Christmas dinners at my aunt's house. Stuck to the side dishes, avoided the gravy and turkey. You can make a good vegan gravy for sure. That is an option. It does require some trickery though. You got to get into some chemicals that some people probably wouldn't want. The goblin scattered as the massive Lego caved in the factory floor and shattered the very foundation. Once it had where it settled. A meteor could hardly have done more damage. Jumpstore says, I never liked turkey even before I became a vegetarian. Sometimes she had ham instead of turkey, which did not make my mom happy. Oh yeah, that's right, wouldn't it? I do my turkey two ways. I know I've said this before, but that's okay, I'm sure. One is I'll try to skip any kind of graphic meat stuff, but sous videing the breasts because they are a dry meat. Doing it in sous vide, they are very juicy. I once had a person confuse it for pork. I don't know if you've ever had pork. I don't know how long you've been strictly kosher, but pork is juicier. So, I mean, that is kind of unheard of with turkey. And then the turkey legs, I would do like, not a confit, like a braise in wine and stock with some other stuff in a darker gravy. So it's two different gravies for the two different types of meat. And then the skin I would turn into crackling and put with the white. GS says lentil shepherd's pie for main course. That's not a bad idea. I do like lentils quite a bit. I make several recipes with lentils. I am rolling one last roll. I'm just going to keep the difficulty to 9. About whether, before we fly out of here, whether he starts a fire by knocking the easy bake oven into the candy cane cistern. And I rolled 2 3s and a 4, which means it passed. This was not the outcome. Jumpstore says, I would have never eaten a goose because I always loved geese. How they mate for life. Thought of eating a bird's soulmate made me a little cry at the very thought. Yeah, I definitely get that. I have that kind of active empathy too. I get it in weird places too, right? Like, if I was like shaking out fleas or something, I'd be like, oh no, breaking up the flea family. Uncle Kitty said, my cat loves turkey. It's gotten to the point he demands left. So my cat used to love chicken, and now he hates it. He won't even touch it. And I don't understand what changed. He used to like bacon too, which is not good for him. We give him tiny, tiny bits of bacon. But he liked the bacon because it's fatty. Cats like fat. Now he doesn't like it either. He only likes his food. He has a lot of like stomach problems though, so he has to eat a very specialized food. So maybe he's just learned his limits. He says about a cat, as if that's a thing cats do. This was not the outcome Goosifer had intended. But then intention was not a rule which he adhered to faithfully. Instead, he stuck his wing in the stir of things until chaos was born. More specifically, as the great Lego rolled through the factory. Goosifer. Jumpstore says, lol, I don't know if I was ever that empathetic, Rory, but that's very sweet. I think to even have the thought about birds suffering without their soulmate requires a certain minimal level of empathy, not to tell you who you are. Because there's definitely people that I've met where you bring it up and they're like, who cares? They're not you, right? That's as far as they get. Witchery says, I will say it's hard caring about Christmas when no one else around you can be bothered. That you can technically cook a Christmas meal for one doesn't make it feel less isolating. I relate to that. I am the person who's probably the most into Christmas, and like I haven't even put up my decorations yet because it's just been hard for me to find it when the people around me are not keen on it this year. But I'll find it. I'll find that spirit. Yeah, because Christmas is a midwinter feast. About hanging out with people that you like. Jumpstore, to that end, you were mentioning pretending Teddy Grahams were alive and begging for their lives as they bit off their limbs. I remember, this is too much to describe, but a very specifically 90s kid thing, probably very specifically North American, to be honest, was these toys called attack packs. They were toys that had, they would transform into monsters. They weren't like Transformers. If you Google them, you'll see them. Anyways, my sister and I loved them. And at one point, we cleared our whole bedroom floor and we created a whole culture of them eating humans. But it was like done like that was, a normal sort of food stock for them. And then we took a bunch of Barbies and like popped their heads off and stuff and put like red plasticine on them. I don't know what my family would have thought of us at that point because it spent hours putting it together. And then they just, like, at some point, my parents walked in and there was just this tableau of violence that their young children had created. I don't even know where we got the idea, to be honest. We weren't allowed to watch like rated R movies. Those just came straight out of our minds. More specifically, as the great Lego rolled through the factory, Goosifer. Fried chicken is delicious. But you can get similar experiences. I know people are going to argue against this, but you can get similar experiences with, pakora and stuff like that. More specifically, as the great Lego rolled through the factory, Goosifer stuck his wing out to tip the Easy Bake testing table over and into the candy cane basin below. As the sweet smell of high and hot candy flames if you're like, why can't this guy type? It's because I'm on the worst keyboard. As the sweet smell of high and hot candy flames began to spread across the factory ceiling, Goosifer wept a single tear. For in the enormity of his acts of chaos, there was nothing much left to to destroy. As he spread his wings and honked out the hole the Lego had made in the roof. He said good night to all, and a merry, merry honk. There we go. All right, let's read back what we got and wrap it up. Jump store. When my grandparents brought home fried chicken when I was little, I would take 2 legs, one for me, one for my cat. I'd hold the leg bone and let her eat it clean. That was our special thing. Aw. I mean, as long as she's not getting the outer crust, it's probably not too bad for her. I mean, don't take medical advice about cats from me, but they don't handle fat that well. But other than that, they should be okay with meat. That's a sweet memory, though. I didn't stop sharing my food with her, though. When I made miso ramen, I always, referring to becoming a vegetarian, sorry, I forgot to give the context, always fed her some of my noodles. Oh, she ate the noodles, eh? I can't, Smudge won't eat any grains. Doesn't even register to him as food. And then I steamed vegetables, she'd eat the ones that fell on the countertop. I am surprised how many cats like vegetables. Losing her was hard, and every 2 years after her death, it still hurts to think about her. Yeah, I have rather famously said to my friends, I've never gotten over the death of a pet, if I'm being honest with myself. The pet that I was probably closest with, that died at like 11, was a little pug named Pumbaa. And he died 17 years ago, 19 years ago, something like that. And I still have his ashes. I never like spread them anywhere, and it still makes me sad. All right, let's read our story about Mary Honkmiss. If you're coming to this part of the show, it is because you just want to know what we came up with. And what we came up with was a story based on this one-page tabletop RPG, meant to be a bit silly, called How the Goose Stole Christmas. It is a game meant to be played with a group of people who are all geese, and then there's a goose master, which is sort of the DM of the table. We didn't play it that way. I sort of occasionally threw it to chat to decide the difficulties for some of our roles and whatever. And it worked pretty well. But I do think if you have friends that like this sort of stuff, this is a fun game probably to pull out. As far as I know, it's either free or extremely cheap on itch.io. I should have a link to it down in the description below. But it is a basic, if you know your standard tabletop RPGs, it's a basic 3d6 system with 3 tiers of difficulty. And it has some prompt tables for the type of goose, what your strength is, what your weakness is. And the way that it adjusts score rather than modifiers, flat modifiers, is you add more dice or you take more dice away. And it has this neat little system called naughty points, which is a reflection of some other things in other games, which is where you can spend a point to add a dice to your roll, and you can spend as many as you want. It even has some prompts on locations, adversaries, and whatever else. And I'll just tell you now, the location we got was the Toy Factory, the adversary we got was the Guard Elves, and the unlikely allies we got was the Elf Labor Union, which you'll notice is 3 ones, in a game where I rolled an improbable amount of ones. But anyways, I'm going to tell you the story of our barnacle goose. If you don't know what it is, you can certainly Google it and look it up. It's not really big in North America, and most of my audience is from North America, so you should probably Google it. Barnacle goose, we rolled. They were good at making jokes, so it's a comedian extraordinaire. and they are bad at being quiet, so as loud as all get out, which is suiting for a goose, I think. And you'll notice that we spent some naughty points there. It was a bright, frozen morning outside the toy factory. Goosifer, a barnacle goose plump with down, could tell the little elf guards at the door were cold by the frozen blue tips of their nose and ears. Goosifer, on the other hand, was well warmed by his ample plumage and barely felt the sharp northern winds of the barren North Pole. Inside the factory, the voices of a chorus of goblins were cackling in poor approximations of Christmas carols. The goblins, on top of being little flesh-eating monsters, were made all the worse by being Santa's scabs. No, not like you might see on healing skin, but the type to undermine the solidarity of the striking elves' union. How, you might wonder, did Goosifer come to be wound up in a Santa's labor dispute? Was he a goose of high moral fiber seeking to do well by the downtrodden amongst him? Nay! Goosifer was a goose, and like all geese lacked all empathy and any sort of moral compass. Instead, the goose was offered bread and four bags of frozen peas by the elf union. If that goose were to successfully raise hell in the scab-ridden toy factory of Santa. Goosifer saw above the guards there was an open window. A deft and careful step after a flutter from a nearby pine would have let Goosifer sneak around the shivering guards with steps made near silent by the layer of fresh snow. However, Goosifer was a goose who honked about every third or fourth step and could hardly bear being unnoticed for as much as 30 seconds. So instead, Goosifer ran screaming directly at the shivering elven guards, his wings wide and his demeanor demonic. Honk, honk, honk. The guards, though, were steadfast, though fear grew in their widening eyes as the incomprehensible beast roared into range. Alas, Goosifer underestimated the resolve of this Santa's most elite elven corps. With merry grunt, they drew up their candy cane weapons, pepper spears, as they were known, and swung for the outstretched neck of Goosifer. He shrunk back quickly into his own body, just in time, keeping his head for another day. Goosifer, a soul with no shame and no regrets, quickly shifted gears, picked up a stick, and hung it in his wings' feathers as if it were a microphone, and he was about to put on a show. He then said, "Whoa! Honk, honk! Tough crowd! I just came here by charge of Santa to entertain our troops here in the noble North Pole." The elves looked at each other, raising an eyebrow, and then said, "Who has ever heard of a goose comedian?" "You! Today, honk!" the goose said with goosey confidence. Keep it up, short stack, or like a tabletop. These old jokes'll go right over your head." Well, the elf furrowed his brow. He was obviously irritated by the slight on his height, but drew back his spear and let the goose continue. After all, maybe it was Santa who sent him. "I notice we have a lot of trees out here tonight at the North Pole," Goosifer vamped. "How are all the trees doing tonight?" And the two elves in the tree line to the snowy forest stood stone still, listening to the soft whistle of the passing breeze and its absence of any laughter. "Good, good," Goosifer said, stamping his webbed foot in the ground, and then saying, "Hey, I used to know a tree, but it wasn't like any tree here tonight. It had fur. Can you believe it? Apparently he came from a line of conifer trees. Honk, honk." There was a cacophony of honking and snorting at his own joke, but when he peeked back at the two guards, they stood as still as two British soldiers. I'm going to have to get my A-grade material out if I'm to get into that factory, the goose thought to himself. Honk, honk, no, but seriously, folks, it's a bit of a tough day for me today. My Uncle Goosey is in the hospital, and Goosifer said this while feigning a solemn look towards the ground. Turns out he loves crossing a street. You know why? Because he loves honking. Honk, honk, honk. Goosifer really shrieked the honks to help sell his excellent joke, and one of the elves, the one below the open window, just ever so slightly twitched his mouth to reveal a bit of levity in his stalwart frown. Hey, so it's the big red man's day soon, Goosifer continued, reassured in his plan that a good joke could indeed paralyze the guards with laughter. But you know what his favorite tree is? It's named after an old friend, Chris Mastery. The elf guards could hold it in no longer. They leaned on their knees and with a long... Oh, God... said, it hurts. These jokes are terrible. You'd be a better roast than a roaster. But that was all the opening Goosifer needed. He honked and leapt on the back of the folded-over elves, then swiftly got through the window to the wide floor inside Santa's northern toy factory. The guards would soon be in pursuit, so time was of the essence to create all the chaos he could. His arrival through the window in a cloud of downs startled the goblins in ill-fit conical elfin hats. Some dropped the toys they were hammering together, but because they were unskilled as goblins are, the toys shattered easily on impact. Goosifer was overwhelmed with choice. Did he nip a hole in all the pant seats of these goblin scabs? Did he tip the Barbies into the Play-Doh processor? Did he toss the easy-bake ovens in the candy cistern and start a fire? Well, time allowing, he would get to all of it. However, one priority shone above the rest: unleash the hell of a Lego tsunami. Considered in most provinces a cruel and illegal practice, war crimes even, weaponized Lego was the most foul and wicked thing a soldier goose could use. The goblin, short, green, and spotted with patchy hair, screamed while running from the spread wings and hellish cry of Goosifer the Fierce, as he sometimes honked into his own mirror. They laid bare a wide path to the tall whirring machine that was fed colored liquid from several basins, then spit out a regular stream of mismatched and sharp-edged plastic blocks known by the kids as Lego. Goosifer ran up to the panel and turned it to a max in order to begin the flood of Lego. Unfortunately for Goosifer, who was no less inclined to technology than any other goose, he failed to notice this referred to the brick size, not the amount. The machine then began to rumble and smoke. The metal anchors that held it to the concrete floor shook and shook until they chipped away small pits around every bolt. And finally, then, when all the cisterns of colored liquid had drained, bursting from the broken belting of the grand machine came a rainbow brick so large it tore through the roof beams as it tumbled off the conveyor belt it was bowing. The goblins scattered out of the path of the massive Lego as it caved in the factory roof and shattered the very foundations where it finally settled to a stop. A meteor could hardly have done more damage to the factory. This was not the outcome Gossifer had intended, but then intention was not a rule which he, a goose, adhered to faithfully. Instead, he stuck his wing in the stir of things until chaos was born. More specifically, as the great Lego rolled through the factory, Gossifer stuck his wing out to the tip, the easy bake testing table over and into that sweet, sweet candy cane basin below. Sugar's flammable, you know. As the sweet smell of high and hot candy flames began to spread across the factory ceiling, Goosifer wept a single tear, for in the enormity of his acts of chaos there was nothing much left to destroy. And as he spread his wings and honked out the hole the Lego made in the roof, he said, "Good night, all, and a merry, merry honk!" There we go. That's how the goose stole Christmas. Jumpstore says, apparently chocolate tastes different for men and women. I wonder if it's that direct or whether it's just from different people. Because I know different cultures taste things differently. Not even just from their culture, but just it might even be on a genetic level. For me, it tastes like the food of the gods, so I don't know what it tastes like to men and why they seem immune to its heavenly flavor. I mean, my father loved chocolate. I'm okay on chocolate. I like it, but it's not my favorite. Like I certainly enjoy chocolate, but I like berries and pastry and stuff more. I don't really like cake that much, which is a bit odd. Since becoming a celiac, there are, I probably in no small part because a lot of gluten-free cakes actually are pretty indiscernible from regular cakes. Just because of the nature of how a cake gets volume and whatever is not too dependent on gluten. I've liked it more, but it was never my favorite. I like pies. GS enjoyed the story, says you do a very convincing Goose, Rory. Well, I am Canadian. Been around a lot of Goose. Witchery said this would be a hysterical children's book, lots of colorful illustrations of Goose chaos. I honestly had that thought as I was doing it. I don't know what moral I'd be teaching children. Don't be a scab, I guess. I should say there's basically no food I don't like. So when I say I don't like something, take it with that in mind. I've rarely found a food I couldn't enjoy on some level. But if I was going to do it, I think it would need to rhyme. I feel like there was some rhyme sneaking in there. Maybe I'll do that. I need money, so it's not the worst idea I've had. Witcher says no moral, only chaos. Yeah, fair enough. Jumpstore says my brother doesn't like cake and it blows my mind every time. Yeah, I don't understand just not liking it. I can understand being like it's too sweet, so I can only have a little bit of it, or I only like certain types. You know what kind of cake I loved, absolutely cannot recreate without gluten, is Japanese cheesecake. It's a steamed cheesecake. Oh my god, it's so good. All right. Well, I'm glad people enjoyed the story. Maybe I'll turn it into something at some point. I do like the idea of this Goose character. I probably, if I wasn't playing a game and rolling dice and whatever, would not have had the jokes go on for so long. But I think that was fun in the context of the game. I've never had that happen, Witchery. Witchery used to bake cakes and then people would just eat the icing. Yeah, you're right. Icing is easier. Jumpstore says I've made Japanese cheesecake before. It's very good. Yeah, it's like this hybrid where it's deceptive because it's so light in its crumb and airy, but it is still as rich as cheesecake. It's so good. And unfortunately, it really does depend on having gluten. It just doesn't work for a few reasons. The other problem is that a lot of grains that you use for for gluten-free cooking it just doesn't hang. Most grains don't hang on to water as well as wheat, so like that's a big part of those. Ooh, Uncle Kitty said there's a local place that makes a baklava cheesecake now. That sounds good. I love baklava. Ooh, fish cakes. I don't know exactly what kind of fish cakes you guys are referring to, but I mentioned that my partner's Japanese, and they make a sort of white fish cake that's kind of sweet and savory. They're little... I forget the name of them offhand here, but they're delicious. Okay. I will, yeah, I think that'll be good enough for us. If folks want to try this themselves, they're welcome to. It's on itch.io. And when the video is no longer live, it should be a pinned comment below where you can try the game. Other than that, thank you so much, everybody, for helping tonight. Hopefully you had fun with the game. as we get closer to the holidays. One thing I will say now, it looks like, and it's hard, without getting too much into my life, which I don't want to do, it's hard to explain why, but it looks like I might have to take 2 weeks, not 1 week off for Christmas. Just how some dates line up where the Tuesday and Thursday of the next week are the 2 days that I have to do stuff. But sometimes if I have the energy and time, I make like an extra pre-recorded video or something around Christmas, but I'm not going to promise that because I don't know what it is. Witchery says, thanks for the stream, Rory. Well, thank you for coming here, Witchery. I hope that you enjoy your Animal Crossing game and that in general, your life is on an upswing from the downswing of fall or spring, I guess, for you. Yeah, thank you so much, Jum Store, Uncle Kitty, for your great recommendations to both of you, and GS for your great jokes and recommendations, and everybody really for their great jokes and recommendations, and anybody out there lingering. And if Zombie Wolf is watching this later, I hope you had fun baking. I think you said you do, I'm sure you probably have some opinions about the various forms of favorite baking goods that we have. I'd be happy to hear yours as well. Okay. Anybody who doesn't want to go home doesn't have to go home, of course. But you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.
Finns det några snälla barn här?